Good morning, everyone. I'm Sabrix Khan, creator of the Via and Rice mods for Crusader Kings 3. I'm here to talk to you about Rice, my mod that adds simple flavor packs to regions, cultures, and religions across the world. Since last ModCon, Rice has grown tremendously from new struggles for Greenland, Normandy, and Sri Lanka, to successful collaborations with the Fallen Eagle and Rajas of Asia mods, and much more. In today's video, we'll look at Rice's next flagship flavor pack, called Sicily, where three worlds met. In particular, we'll explore a new struggle called the Sicilian Frontier. While this video is mainly for modders, if you're a player of Rice, it'll also give you a preview of what to expect with the Sicily update. For modders, I want this to be a workshop for struggles. Modding struggles can look intimidating, so as someone with around 8 struggles under my belt, including the Sicily struggle, I hope to help you with modding struggles by discussing my methods for designing struggles and what I think makes a good struggle. For those who don't know, struggles are a mechanic in Crusader Kings 3 that gives certain regions special rules and gameplay that allow for a more immersive historical experience. Alright, let's get started with it. Before we dive into struggles, we have to first ask what a struggle is. Many players think of struggles as big wars. When they talk about struggles they like to see in Crusader Kings in the future, it's stuff like the Crusades or the conflict between the Byzantines and Turks over Anatolia. Now don't get me wrong, these are good struggle ideas, but it's limiting to think of struggles as just military focused. My Greenland struggle in Rice, for instance, can be won without conquest. In my opinion, and this is something I'll repeat over and over again in this video, struggles are narratives, struggles are stories, struggles are about the ebb and flow of history. Like stories, struggles have characters, struggles have a setting. Struggles have a general plot, with a beginning, middle, and possibly an end. Some of you might not know, but writing is my true love, and honestly, modding is kind of a side hobby to writing for me. I mention this because I've learned that designing struggles is like writing a good story. As a modder, if you can understand that struggles are narratives, rather than just some code or mechanics, designing them is much easier. For many modders, it can be overwhelming trying to brainstorm the decisions, mechanics, events, and all that stuff that goes into a struggle. I suggest ignoring all that at first. Before anything else, I would first look into what is your struggle's theme. What is its focus, or central argument, in other words? For the Iberian struggle in vanilla, for instance, the central theme is coexistence. For the Persian struggle, it's the Abbasid Caliphate. For the Greenland struggle in Rice, it's survival. When I started researching for the Sicily flavor pack, I noticed many scholars talk about Sicily as a medieval frontier between three worlds, Islam, Byzantium, and the Latin West. I realized that this would be the story of my Sicily struggle, the ups and downs of a wild frontier that so many peoples and kingdoms tried to control, a place where identity and loyalties were blurry. If you're having trouble deciding on a theme for your struggle, one trick I've found helpful is to think about the struggle in terms of a question. For instance, in Vanilla's Persian struggle, the question is about whether the caliph is based or cringe, as the young people of today would say. For my Sicily struggle, on the other hand, the question is about what is the nature of the frontier, and how do different people exploit or understand it. Once you have a focus, a theme, an argument your struggle revolves around, the next step is to decide the struggle's phases, a period of time in the struggle. Again, I approach it like a story. To me, phases are like types of chapters in the book, or episodes in a TV show, or scenes in a movie. Let's take an example of a stereotypical Hollywood action movie. These movies have violence phases or scenes where fighting happens, and quiet phases or scenes where characters reflect on why they fight or strategize for the next fight. Phases and struggles are similar. They represent similar trends or events or aspects of the history or lore for that region. For the Sicily struggle, I have two normal phases, the borderland phase and the colonization phase. Borderland represents periods of instability and transition in South Italy, like when the Muslims gradually conquered Sicily, or when the Normans did the same 2 centuries later. The colonization phase, meanwhile, represents periods of relative stability in the frontier of South Italy, when realms like the Calvin Emirate or the Norman Kingdom of Sicily expanded their authority over the region's resources, peoples, and cultures. Here's a tip for modders if you have trouble coming up with phases. If you have to copy and paste from one of Vanilla's struggles, or from another mod, just change the name of the phases at least. In the Fallen Eagle mod that I've worked on, my Greater Khorasan struggle was loosely based on Vanilla's Iberian struggle, but for instance, I changed the name of the conciliation phase to the development phase, Conciliation is about diplomacy and cooperation. Development is about growth and prosperity. By just changing the name, I change the focus and the vibe of the whole phase. One last thing about phases. I feel many modders, myself included, have a tendency to brainstorm a lot of phases initially. I advise to not have too many phases in your struggles. Phases should be distinct and avoid thematic overlap to focus the narrative. Once you know your struggle's focus and its phases, everything's a lot easier to figure out, whether it's the catalyst effects or the modifiers of each phase. To use the story analogy again, let's take our example of the action movie with the violence phase and the quiet phase. Let's say in your movie you want the hero to fight the villain in an epic battle. Does this sequence go into our violence phase or quiet phase of our quote-unquote action movie struggle? Obviously, it should be the violence phase. In other words, it's all about finding an appropriate phase for each element of your struggle. Now let's take a more practical example with assigning a catalyst to a real struggle. For those who don't know, catalysts are when rulers involved in the struggle take certain actions that push the struggle towards one phase or another. In Rice's upcoming Sicily struggle, for instance, rulers can give shipments of Sicilian grain to other rulers. Historically, Sicily was an important exporter of grain, affecting the politics and economy of kingdoms that relied on these exports. If you do this interaction while in the borderlands phase of the struggle, they'll push the struggle towards the colonization phase, representing how these economic moves strengthen Sicily's connections with other realms. Effects and modifiers, meanwhile, are more like rules that apply for the struggle region during specific phases. Like with catalysts, it's also a matter of figuring out what makes sense for each phase. Now, you may have trouble coming up with interesting catalyst effects and modifiers when designing your own struggles. An easy trick I've learned is to go to vanilla struggles and look through the code and compile a list of all the catalyst effects and modifiers in them. Then I just copy and paste the ones I like into my own struggle. For instance, Vanilla's Iberian struggle has some effects that make it easier to declare war during the hostility phase. These fit well with the borderland phase of the Sicily struggle when things are supposed to be a little chaotic. I literally copy-pasted those effects over to my struggle. Easy as that. Lastly, most stories have an ending. Struggles are the same when it comes to ending decisions. It's best for ending decisions to tie back to your central theme or question. You could have endings based on what group is the most dominant. For instance, I could have a Byzantine or Muslim ending for Rice's upcoming Sicily struggle. However, I decided the story with that wasn't interesting enough. My Sicily struggle has basically 4 endings. 2 are like fake endings that it often gravitates towards. The periphery ending phase, where Sicily becomes a backwater, or the imperiality ending phase when it's exploited by another realm. The struggle can be repeated after this. However, for the 2 real endings, which I call Dominion and Crossroads, they both answer the central question of the Sicily struggle. What is a frontier, and how do people understand it? If you pick the Dominion ending, your answer is that a frontier is a chaotic land that must be tamed by force under one group ruling a powerful realm. If you pick the Crossroads ending, your answer is that a frontier is a place of opportunity, where different people can trade, share ideas, and cooperate. And that concludes our overview of the Sicily struggle for Rice and my struggle workshop. I want to thank you everyone who is still here watching this long video. I know struggles are controversial in the Crusader Kings community, but I believe they have the potential to truly encourage players to look beyond a pop culture view of history as just a bunch of names, dates, and accurate facts. History is more than a collection of trivia about the past. When I was in college, one of my professors said, "The past is what happened in the past. History is our narrative, our story, our interpretation of that past, ideally backed by good evidence." For me, struggles are a great way to help players understand history as a nuanced, complex, amazing narrative about humanity. And I hope to see mods in vanilla add more struggles in the future to tell interesting stories about history or the lore of fictional settings. Anyhow, the Sicily flavor pack for Rice is planned for release later this May. I look forward to seeing how you will all rewrite the history of this dynamic, exciting frontier of the Mediterranean, and stay tuned for more information and previews. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.